Welcome to WorkYogi Diaries. I'm your host, Santosh Shiva. A quick introduction about myself. I am from Bangalore, India, but I live in Houston, Texas now. For the last 25 plus years, I've been working in the technology consulting as a sales professional. Please join me every week to hear stories about people finding self-expression through their work. So why this show? Because we spend a major part of our life at work of some kind. It's a journey. It's a journey of ups and downs, self-discovery, and finding one's groove over a period of time. Stories of everyday folks finding their groove through work is worth telling and listening to. And hopefully we can take back some inspiration to our own lives. My guest today is someone who has spanned a career in engineering and general management and scaled the ladder in corporate America. He is a passionate engineer at heart, but has evolved into a product creator with a passion for user experience. He describes himself as a serial intrapreneur, someone who has incubated products and technologies within large corporations. He epitomizes the American dream. In his past career, he's been the founder of HP's Wearables and cloud mobile printing business. He's been credited for coining the word engineered by HP as a sub-brand, for creating wearables and consumer lifestyle brands like HUGO BOSS, Coach, Titan, FERRARI, and MOVADO. He's been head of all products and engineering for digital home at Comcast. He's been a chief product officer at SharkNinja, and currently he is responsible for something very cool and exciting in the area of robotics and artificial intelligence. We get to talk about his journey from a humble beginning in India. How did he evolve himself into a product creator, visionary, brand marketer? How did he grow up the ladder in a corporate America? What's his value system around leadership and people? Let's welcome Sridhar Solur. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to it so you get the latest updates. Hit like if you like this video and leave your comments. Let us know if you took something away from this conversation. Hey Sridhar, welcome to WorkYogi Diaries.
Hey, thank you for having me, Santosh. After the run yogi, the other part of my life is about work. Can't wait to have this conversation with you, man.
Absolutely. Your work journey is very inspiring. There's a lot to learn from you in terms of how you've pursued your career and how you built it. So we're going to jump into that a little bit. But before that, let me hand it back to you and have you do a quick personal introduction, and then we'll jump in.
All right. Sridhar Solur. I live in the greater Boston area. I have a 14-year-old boy. My wife teaches music and dance. And I have 3 dogs. Go look up what the name of the first dog is. The first dog is Casper Ten Boom. The second one is Captain Jack Sparrow. And the third one is Miss Elizabeth Swan. So that's a wee bit about me, Santosh.
Nice. Love the way you've been creative about your pet names.
Because movies inspire, man.
Yeah. And you're a creative person, so it all gels very well. So Sridhar, let's maybe start early. You're obviously, your background is engineering. So let's start with, was engineering destiny or a choice? Let's start there.
It was definitely a choice. My mother is an engineer. I grew up building radio sets with vacuum tubes, and so that was a little bit of inspiration. My mother was also responsible for the power circuitry for the Indian satellites. So there's a lot of inspiration there with the lady in a sari working with the Indian Satellite Research Organization and Bharat Electronics, and basically doing big things. So yeah, and growing up in India in the 80s, it was very clear that you only had one of three career choices, especially if you have to escape the vortex of poverty. You either had to be an engineer, a doctor, or a loser. So, so I kind of picked the engineering field because I could get some help from my mother.
On a lighter vein, Sridhar, a lot of the folks that we uh, categorize as losers those days either became big business people or politicians.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's amazing in terms of how social smartness can take you such a long way in life, and we should touch upon that subject. So
Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Santosh.
yeah, yeah. Perfect. So, well, engineering was by choice. Looks like you like to tinker around and make things. And what did you start with? Did you start with computer science, or where did you start from an engineering perspective?
So, I was born in South India, lived in a joint family. Our home was always like a marketplace. The floating population of our home was like around 25, 30 people at any point in time. And I wanted to get away and go as far as possible from home. So I basically picked an engineering school, like as far from home as possible. That was in Kashmir. My only other choice was in the east of India, a place called Silchar. So I was very clear that I wanted to be as far as away from home as possible. Think of it this way, right? I'm 17 and a half years old, and I have picked a location for engineering school or college that was 72 hours away by train. And we couldn't afford to fly. So I knew that my parents are not going to show up, tada, one fine morning. And I knew I would have enough runway to like clean up my room if I had to. So long story short, I chose a destination like far, far away. And one of the easiest way for me to get into Kashmir at that point in time was to take a branch of engineering called metallurgy. I knew that was not going to be my destination. I knew that I could change it at some point in time, and I just needed a foot in the door at the farthest engineering college. And I'd been to Kashmir before; it was gorgeous, and I started with metallurgy in Kashmir.
And did you do all the 4 years in Kashmir?
No, no, the year is 1989. We all know what happened in 1989. The world changed. Like the wall fell, right? And there was no more Cold War. And what happened was Kashmir became a hotbed for militancy. So it's like one fine morning we woke up and we had all the Indian armed forces on one side and you had the militants on the other. And we were the poor students, like right in between. So literally, this was studying in a battlefield, and it was really dire circumstances. And what it gave me was a passion to like get the other students from my home state transferred. So there's a little bit of political activism that started there. We needed to save our lives on one side, but simultaneously also get a transfer. You know how bureaucratic sometimes the Indian system can be. So that basically started the crusade of writing in newspapers. Several articles of mine were published in Times of India. I met several political activists um, across the aisle. And at that point in time, I also met one of the Indian stalwarts, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And then, finally met with the chief minister of our home state, Karnataka. His name was Virendra Patil. And finally got a transfer for all of us. But the beauty of the transfer, when you were transferring, you could change your branch. And I changed my branch to the most popular branch at that point in time, which was electronics and communication. And I finished the rest of my engineering on the coast of my home state, where and in a place called Suratkal. So that's a there was a monkey wrench in the works. I was not as far away from my parents, but hey, I was alive and I had a branch of engineering that I finally wanted to be in. So I'll call that a win-win.
Fascinating, fascinating, Sridhar. And I also see there's a seed of leadership that got incubated in that process, right? Taking a cause. This is not just you. It was personal, of course, but it also had impact with all the students who were impacted by that. So I guess that's a seed of leadership that must have carried you forward throughout your career.
Yeah, again, this was not planned. It was something someone had to do. And I just felt like I was equipped. I had the ability to get on a soapbox and address a large set of students. I learned to talk to journalists. I spent a lot of time with some of the well-known newspapers those days, like Times of India, Indian Express. I knew all the editors and submitted several stories, and then worked with politicians on the other side. And that was, as they say in the Indian language, Majburi ka naam Mahatma Gandhi. Like, you had to do it, right? I mean, when there is a fire in your rear, you have no choice. You just have to execute. And so that was a burning platform situation. That's what it meant in Hindi, the Indian language. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Again, not planned. It just happened that way.
Absolutely. All right. So now you're in electronics, and I guess that is destiny. The choice of
That's
metallurgy.
Well, look, again, I always say it's not, life is a journey. There's no destination. You actually, it's a summation of micro pivots. And all you have to do is to keep pivoting. And I think that was one of my earlier pivots, in my opinion.
Terrific. So you did electronics, completed, and then what? Did you work in India at all, or did you move
Yeah.
on abroad?
Oh, no. Look, I grew up in a very lower middle class family. And while a lot of people could easily go and do their masters in the US, the caveat is you need to show that you have a lot of money and you're not a prospective immigrant. So the point is, I got 4 visa rejects to come to the US, even though I had scholarships in multiple universities. And I was gutted, shattered, devastated, felt abandoned. But what do you do? Life must go on. So what I did was I had a job from campus and worked in a research firm back in India, and then got to work for a multinational in India, which is Digital Equipment Corporation, and then DEC sent me to the US in Boston. And when a company like Digital sponsors you, you get your visa in one shot. So the beauty is, I came to the US as an intercompany transfer of executives, and I literally got my green card in 7 months. And I looked around at all my friends who had come here to study on their H1s, and they were like 5, 6 years away from their green card. And I was actually one of the first guys to be a US citizen. So again, another story here is it's okay to fail. right? You'll always find a way out. And then I went on to do my master's here, and then that was completely paid for from my company. So I have no regrets at all. Yeah, initially it felt like, 4 visa rejects is really, really hard. But then I look at life in hindsight and say, oh my God, think about it this way. If I had come here as a student, the student loans, the H1 to green card, that would have been a much longer process. I really think I got everything that I have in life has come to me very easily. So that's how I've rationalized, Santosh.
Yeah. There is this, and I don't want to be sounding too philosophical or anything like that, but this is Zen saying about be like water. And if water just flows, and what you just described is a perfect example of that. Something happens, you keep going, but you figure a way to uh, go over the rock, around the rock, and not get stuck with the rock. That's how water behaves.
Yeah, you're gonna see that was another micro pivot there. You will see a series of micro pivots in life, right? So that's, again, I've been very lucky.
Digital, wow, those were the days. With the Alpha 64-bit processors, and they were the first in that domain. I used to work with a company that sold silicon graphics back then, and we used to compete with DEC, especially on the high-end supercomputing side of things. And I remember DEC was all about 64-bit, Alpha processors and SGI. We used to talk about multiprocessing and all that. It was fun. Fun days.
Yeah, for me, I worked mostly on the networking side and security and Alta Vista, one of the first, like the earlier search engines. So that was the group that I worked with. So anytime I started my career, one of the first products was like, Alta Vista. So Alta Vista Firewall, Alta Vista Search, and then of course network products, a lot of network products. So that gave me a solid background on internet working, and that's taken me a long way, in terms of being a developer, being an architect, but always making sure that I'm technical in some shape, way, or form.
Terrific. So you're here now. You're in Boston, digital. You've done your masters, and how were you at that point seeing, kind of taking yourself forward? Because you also moved later on to HP and product management and branding, which is fascinating because I've never seen too many engineers really pivot into that domain, which is a very specialized area. So how can you talk to us a little bit about that? How did that evolve?
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. I went to business school, sponsored by DEC and then Compaq, and Compaq was acquired by HP. So I have a saying that I can't be fired; slaves have to be sold. So the point is, it's like one company after the other. But after business school, I wanted to use those skills. The worst thing that you can do is you learn, you have structured education with certain set of skills that's supposed to augment your base skills. And I was very clear that I wanted to use my ability to develop a product on one side and also like sell the product to make a holistic business. I even wrote a blog, it says I build products, I sell products. I will share the link for that blog post. So I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was very clear. I wanted to make sure that I add value, and in every step I take, I increase the impact radius of the products that I'm creating. So as a part of that, I joined HP Ventures, HP Corporate Ventures. HP Corporate Ventures was looking at a series of new startups within a company. And one of the startups was called Visual Radio. So I'll take you back to like 2004, 2005. Uh, the biggest phone maker those days, mobile phone, was Nokia. And then you had RIM. And every Nokia phone, whether it was Series 40, Series 60, had an FM chipset. So we were like, okay, so when people are listening to music, how can we sell songs to them? And to do that, you have to simulcast on a data network. And those days, the data network was called GPRS. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember, right? Yes, 2004, absolutely. 2005, GPRS. And the point was, in the US, people commute mostly in cars. So this was not made for the US market. We said, hey, how about we take this for a non-US market? So I moved to London and I was the head of operations. So I had never done operations in my life. That means basically creating a data center, managing the leases, and then connecting to radio stations on one side, connecting to mobile operators on the other. 14 countries, Santosh. Like, the point was, I was living in a new country, which is UK, building a new team, had a fabulous young team. And we should touch upon at some point in time, where are they now? And you'll see people are on Apple, Google, Facebook. So this team, it's not just about the team that worked together and now, working somewhere. But the point is, this is the team that the people in the team have gone to some of the most amazing companies in the world and working there. So built Visual Radio. I was running operations for that. And then when Visual Radio got moved back to Nokia, we had all this infrastructure. We had compute stack, we had storage stack, we had all these data center leases. We said, we're going to create an incubator, a Web 2.0 incubator. The year is close to around 2007. And I said, look, I'm going to run this incubator, but I also want to be an entrepreneur in residence. So I want to run my little portfolio of startups. And since then, there is no looking back. I've just created businesses, but I always start the business by creating a product. And the first product that really became a big thing is called Cloud Print or ePrint, HP ePrint. And now, if you're printing from your mobile, this was basically the early days of enabling printing from a mobile. And that brought a lot of fame and money. And I starred in an advertisement which was featured during March Madness and NBA Final. And I should send you the link too. I don't know if you have seen that, but that was basically the first business where it was not just a product, it was not just operations, it was not just engineering. It had sales, it had marketing, and it was a holistic business that I ran as a GM. And since then, all I have been doing is moving from one business to the other. But let me answer your question. Your question was, how did I move into branding? Easy. Like, we had built this connected printer, mobile printing business. So you could print from BlackBerry, Apple, Android devices to literally any printer that's connected onto the internet. And I did that for some time. And you can only be in printing for so long. I had to liberate myself from the tyranny of printing. It's not like I woke up one fine morning and I said, "Ooh, la la, I'm excited. Printers excite me." No, bro. It was all about trying to solve for a problem. Mm-hmm. And now we had this instantiation of devices connected to the web, or by that time it was called the cloud. You're talking about 2012, from 2007 to 2012. This was all about printing. And then I said, we all knew that Apple was coming up with a smartwatch, and no one in China can keep a secret. And we knew when Apple comes with a smartwatch, the incumbents are going to get hurt. And the incumbents are companies like MOVADO, who has, they have brands like HUGO BOSS, Juicy Couture, FERRARI, Titan, the Indian watch company, for example. a lot of Swiss watch companies, and they didn't have technology. The beauty of this problem is when an incumbent in an industry gets disrupted, if you create a solution for the incumbent, it is a board level problem. And incumbents are cash rich. And they will make sure that their slide is manageable. Right? It's not like when Apple comes in, they're going to take away market share. But what you had to do is like develop something for them. So we thought it was a bright idea to go create a watch, a wearable. But wait a minute, we are HP. Wearing an HP branded watch is like wearing a General Electric watch, right? Because what you wear is fashion, what you carry is technology. And like HP going into MOVADO or Titan and saying that you're going to build a watch, they're going to laugh you out. They said, "Oh, where are your credentials?" And let me tell you, Santosh, I didn't know anything about watches. The only watch I had was what my wife gave me when we were dating in London. So I knew nothing. What? The beauty is, we said we were going to do something very different. We basically created a watch under a brand of an up-and-coming fashion designer. His name is Michael Bastian. We looked at up-and-coming fashion designers like Tom Brown, Zach Posen, Rebecca Minkoff, great American designers, and picked Michael Bastian. And then very quickly realized that people don't buy fashion from Best Buy or Staples where HP sells their laptop and printers. We were like, oh my God, we got to find a distribution channel. And then we signed a relationship with a flash sale retailer called Guild. And we did an exclusive deal with Guild. The beauty of that was, like Michael Bastian, the following were urban hipsters. And then to create the watch, basically worked with ex-fossil executives who are actually based around where you live, around Plano, Dallas, and they came to work for us, and we created this watch. And let me tell you another thing: it took us 8 to 9 months. So far, all the products that I've been involved in, all the businesses, the time to create the product is 8 to 9 months. If it takes longer, it becomes a federal project. We started this in February. We launched this at the end of October. And the beauty of the launch, when we launched this product, we made 3,000 pieces. Sold out, you're talking about 3 hours. It was all gone. It was a big hit. And the beauty is when you are a new player and you enter an industry, guess what happens? You get sued. There'll be a cease and desist. Someone will come after you. That is the rite of passage, right? And the beauty is, we didn't have much time after that. We had developed a watch. We went to MOVADO, we went to Titan, we went to all the other watch companies. But we just had one piece of hardware, like a watch module, which was just one. And then that module had to speak different brand languages. The same module. A person who wears a HUGO BOSS watch, wears a fitted suit. So we did bespoke UI, tailored palettes. The language, the brand language there was different. But you needed technology to speak that brand language. But when we made a Juicy Couture watch, when someone got a call, it was just like blingy. It was all blingy. When it was MOVADO, we only amplified the essentials. And we had a thing called privilege reveal. So when you're sitting in a meeting and you have a smart watch, when you get a notification, everybody in the room would know that you got a notification. But MOVADO, it would buzz ever so gently. And then you would turn around, you would turn your wrist, flick it, and then it would tell you what the message was. So the summary is the same hardware, same backend, same app, but you needed technology to speak different brand languages. And that is where branding is something that I fell in love with. Long answer, but that gives you the journey.
You've awesome, really terrific. Now, a couple of things that I heard. One is, you moving to London was a big decision. Obviously, there was a pull there, and you moved, from what I hear, from probably an very engineering specific kind of a role to an operations kind of a role, and then seem to have pivoted into something beyond that, which is fashion and branding and technology. So, a couple of things that come to my mind that I want to ask. One is, you talked about people very passionately just now in this what you described. You were talking about people doing very well in different places. So, what that was, that an organic growth for you in terms of just embracing people as a part of your growth? Is that something that comes naturally to you, or is that something you have to develop?
I don't think I spent a lot of time consciously developing that. I grew up in a joint family, and you have to be in a joint family. You compete for resources. You have your cousins and uncles who are older than you. You need to get your way. In the sense that I thrive when I have people around me. Even now, I like to be around people because I grew up around people. And I did tell you that the floating population of our home was like 30 people all the time. It was hard for me to study, but that's something that I thrived on. And I'm always very clear that you have to hire and develop the best. And I was very clear that I will always hire people who I think are smarter than me. And I continue that till this day. The reason is because I'm very curious. Even today, when I sit on my one-on-ones, it's not about the first 5 minutes. I talk about all the goals and where we are, how I can help. But the rest of it, I make it a point to learn from them, learn as much as possible from them. So I think it's a combination of curiosity and trying to hire and develop the best. And one other thing, I've always told my teams that I want to recognize them openly, not just internally in an organization, but externally on platforms like LinkedIn, because I want to be able to compete for them with the other people in the industry. Mm-hmm. Look, the beauty is when you say goodbye to a member of your team, it should be because, you know what, it's a much bigger challenge that I can't afford to provide, or it's a dollar amount that I can't provide. And it's an amazing contribution to their life. And this goes back to my tenet of, you should never take more than you can give. And that philosophy has been very helpful for me. And I can very proudly say that the members of my team so far have done extremely well. And I openly, even now, there are times where the members of my team have asked me to be a reference for their next job. That is a comfort level you need to have.
Yeah.
Because you're genuinely looking to grow them beyond the company's interest.
Terrific.
And that's, for me, that is the level of extreme development for members of your team.
That's terrific. Those are the points that we got to jot down, which is the whole idea of hiring people smarter than you. We read about it, but in what you're saying, it's real. It's something that served you, and it makes complete sense. Complete sense. So a question there for you is, managing people who are smarter than you is also requires a huge amount of self-confidence, and where do you go for that self-confidence? Where do you stand when you acknowledge that somebody's smarter than you in a way that still keeps the dynamics respectable, if that makes sense?
No, I think it's a great question. So let's. I'll give you a couple of examples and then anecdotes and highlight this. We all have our strengths. Today, if I were to look at my team, I have a phenomenal head of engineering. The head of engineering is a subject matter expert in warehouses and distribution centers, which I absolutely lack. But you know what I'm really good at? I can build robots in volume. And when we talk to each other, we complement each other. And wait a minute, I look at stuff that was done when we built millions and millions of bots. And on one side, I understand software, the other side, I understand hardware. And there is a concept called chaos engineering. Chaos engineering concept was introduced by Netflix. A less than 30-second summary is basically you perturb your environment that is in production, and basically your assumption is your SLAs should be able to you need to be able to hit your SLAs even when the system is sufficiently degraded in performance. And that's why Netflix has done that so well. You see at Amazon, AWS has fault insertion, but no one has done chaos engineering where hardware and software has come together. No one. And we were like, hey, you know what, head of engineering? You and I will sit together and we will develop chaos engineering for both hardware and software. We do manual fault insertion on our bots where we imbue supply chain variances in addition to the variances and perturbations in the cloud. And guess what happens in that scenario? I understand hardware and creating hardware in volume. This person understands warehousing and engineering and software. But now I'm raising the bar with chaos engineering, which is his engineering subject with software, but I'm adding hardware to that. And now we're going to be publishing a paper together. So that's just one example
Yep.
of how you know for sure what your skill sets are. And when you say you hire people smarter than you, they are all subject matter experts. But at the end of the day, when I talk confidently about P&L, when I talk about EBITDA optimization, when I talk about value add and value engineering to remove cost out of the system, and when I talk to my product team on what the roadmap has to be, I have a global view. There is no time for insecurity. And as long as I'm a fellow seeker of knowledge and I keep asking the second level, third level, fourth level, fifth derivative questions, you know what? You will still be able to earn the respect. The first thing about leadership is it is never bestowed, it has to be earned. And you have to do all these micro pivots to make sure that you're genuinely adding value in every conversation. And I don't think it is an issue there at all because I will continue to learn from my head of engineering about supply chain and warehouse management systems. I'll continue to learn about aspects of road mapping from my head of product and from the head of programs on creating a drumbeat. But I'm the one who's actually bringing it all together. I'm the conductor. And there is no reason that I need to feel insecure because I'm the one who is highlighting the beacon of what good looks like for engineering. I'm setting the standards for P&L, what our revenue has to be, how quickly things have to flow through the pipe. So the range of conversation on integration of Salesforce, Mercado, HubSpot on one side to going into Jira to figure out what exactly someone is not doing because of software hygiene. You need to be, if you have that breadth and the view, you're on the top of the mountain. You're looking around. You don't have to worry. And I've never felt insecure that way at all. And I think you take a posture of a student, and
Makes
there
sense.
is no insecurity in being a student.
No, I think those are very powerful. Again, notes to be taken on this, because I think what you talked about in terms of being having a view that is holistic, is very, very powerful. And it's like almost the metadata of a system, and having the ability to uh, look from there is what I'm hearing as a key, I would say, a key core of what a leadership is about, which allows you to be operate without being threatened, or and being inclusive about people's capabilities. Now the question I have is, how does one develop that competency? How does, because everyone wants to grow in their careers, everyone thinks they're doing their best, and I think from what you rightly pointed out, the system view, or the systemic ability to think at the level of a system holistically, is not something that comes to everyone naturally. The tendency to get siloed into something very specific and get locked there. So how does one develop that ability? Is it books? Is it, where do you go to self develop and open your mind?
I call that multimodal.
Mhm.
It's not structured in any way. Uh, if you actually keep a diary, if I look around, I must have like 60 or 70 such books.
Okay.
I diligently write down things that I learned the previous week and things I want to learn. And there are mornings when I make myself a cup of tea or coffee, um, when I just go back to my old books and actually look at things that I said I was going to read, or a blog that I had written down about and I had not, or a golden nugget in a conversation with someone that I sat next to on a plane. I think it's a summation of multiple things coming together. But where you get it is kind of inconsequential, but inculcating a mindset to absorb information and to like enjoy the learning is something that you got to train on. You got to keep asking the question, why? I mean, like, keep
Mhm.
going down third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seven derivative questions. And once you do that, you'll become a fellow seeker of knowledge. I think that is the training that one needs to have, in my opinion. How you get that from people, books, podcasts, you can structure it in your own way. And we all learn at our own pace. And I keep saying the only race you have is with yourself. So, what works for me may not work for other people. But for me, that's a mindset that I have consciously tried to inculcate.
Mhm.
And I keep myself honest by writing.
So what drives you? What drives you to do this?
All I know is this is the only way. I was taught growing up that I need to get my fundamentals right. I was taught that it was not about the grades. Learning is key. Grades are going to follow.
Mm.
And when I read about a subject, it was an endeavor to understand. But later, I very quickly understood that I also needed to learn how to write exams so that I can score extremely well. But I looked at that also as a learning process. But I did not divorce the true learning
Yep.
just to get grades. So I think it was imbued into me very early on, and I have enjoyed the learning mindset. very early on. And I look at that, and I also look at the propensity of me, you know, being with people. And look, if you enjoy the company of people, you need to be able to give information that other people find valuable.
No, that makes sense.
And I really think it's just a combination of my mindset. Um, well, your ability to have that range to talk about travel on one side, to food on the other, um, to like making wine. I really think there is something there, right? And it's a short life. Let's absorb as much knowledge as possible, and then and create products that positively impacts people's lives around the world.
What I'm hearing in what you're saying, Sridhar, is you give a nice example about, do your work and the grades will follow. I think that's a great tip, because you're talking about results here in workspace, in corporate life, any kind of business workspace. We are ultimately measured by results. And to your point, focusing on self improvement, ongoing self improvement, learning, adopting new methods is a is probably a sure short way of making sure of delivering those results that you want to deliver, right? And that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. The other thing I'm hearing is just the passion for life and passion for day to day is enriched by expansion of knowledge and awareness, which makes life interesting and work interesting in the process. And that's what I'm hearing in terms of what kind of is behind some of this. And for viewers who are listening to this, in terms of the why of doing something like this, I think that's what I'm hearing as a
Yeah, I
takeaway.
think you were more eloquent in your summarization. And be a seeker of knowledge. Be a seeker of knowledge. And look, things will most probably come to you. I've had three good exits, and it's not like I chase them, but when you understand, when you have the knowledge of where the rising tides are, you play in that space. And rising tide will lift most of the boats. And if you're playing in that space, hey, chances are, your boat is also going to get lifted, mate.
Yeah.
And I really think that is really important.
Yeah.
If you just chase exits, I think you're missing out. You might get lucky, but a sure shot method is to play and understand the ecosystems. And the only way is to like learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I tell you this, there is no elevator to success, only a staircase.
Well said. Well said. And talking about, trends and riding the trends, let's come to present, where you're working on cutting edge. You're working in the area of robotics, AI. Big talk about it everywhere. So, where do you think robotics is going to go in the next 5 to 10 years? And your thoughts on AI ethics in relation to robotics. I'm guessing you are confronted by something like this on a day to day basis, or for someone who's working so closely in this domain.
So, robotics. The beauty of robotics is the ability to perform jobs that humans cannot. The ability to accentuate and increase the efficacy of humans. If you look back at humanity, there has been so much progress, and robotics is just a part of that progression is how I see it. The work that I'm doing right now in robotics, where you're talking about a controlled fleet of robots working together, which is fascinating. It's not about an individual autonomous robot performing tasks. You're talking about hundreds, thousands of robots working together, having a conscience on top, and working together, which is MatterNet. When things like that happen, it's a transformational change versus an incremental automation. Santosh, robots have been there for the last 30, 40 years on assembly lines, doing repetitive tasks. When you do such repetitive tasks, it's different. But when robots have that wee bit of gray matter, if you will, and conscience, and makes they have the ability to make decisions on the fly, the results that you get is transformational, where no humans could have ever achieved that. And that is progress. That's progress. Second, there are things where it's hazardous for humans. Whether you're looking at robots disinfecting parts of a hospital, you don't want humans to be doing that. You want robots to be involved. 3, surgery. You know this. I underwent a brain surgery a few years ago. And surgeries have become so precise because, you know what? Yeah, you have surgeons, but you have robots in there that stop your surgeons from going into a place where they're not supposed to go. It accentuates. Exoskeleton. You want to carry something heavier? Man, an exoskeleton helps. So I really do think the world of robotics is all about transformational change. And everyone have to take a step back. And when people talk about ethics, look at greater shifts that have happened when we moved from an agrarian economy to an industrialized economy. There used to be a time when there was no primetime television. You were working in the fields till around 7 or 8 p.m. You would come back. At most, you would go watch someone sing and dance. But when we moved from an agrarian to an industrialized economy, you would punch out at 6 p.m., you would come back. There was all this time. You didn't know what to do. Then we had television and soap. So we're just on a cusp of a shift. I look at that and say, look, it's just a transformation that's happening. You went from an agrarian economy to an industrialized economy to a services economy to a digital economy. And we are moving to a world where things were done by you to done for you. So that's the summary. And when we talk about ethics in AI, yes, it's a very heavy topic. But for now, with the level of AI that we have, as long as, just like when you create products, you have an obsession, a customer obsession, or doing the right thing. As long as people create products and services, which is about doing the right thing by the people, I think we will be okay.
Yeah.
And the question that you asked was a little bit philosophical too, and I want to quote just like 3 lines from my favorite philosopher. His name is Robert Ardrey, and just the last 3 lines. He said, "Shouldn't we appreciate our victories, however often we have failed?" That means, when the question of moving from one economy to the other, question of ethics. He said, "Shouldn't we enjoy our peaceful acres, however often they are turned into battlefields?" Shouldn't we appreciate our dreams, however rarely they are accomplished? The miracles of man is not how much he has fallen, but how magnificently he has risen. We will be remembered by the stars, not by the corpses, but by our poems and celebrations. Look, we should appreciate the symphonies, however seldom they are played. And the same discussion goes to the concept of ethics and AI. And I am a firm believer in humanity that, if we have the right obsession about doing the right thing. And of course, there'll be fringes,
Yep.
but as all the mythology tells, evil is not going to win.
Yep.
And that's where my head is, man. That's where my head is.
Totally. No, I do hope what you say comes true. I know this is a very complicated area. In a book that I read, a personal favorite book of mine called *Sapiens*. Yuval Harari talks about a useless class, an emergence of a useless class. We're about 7 billion human beings on the planet today, and what happens if the menial jobs go away? What do we do? What do people do? And maybe the answer is, like you said, is to not create a useless class, but create a creative class or something like that. And obviously, I'm not a philosopher or a socioeconomic expert thinking about these things, but one reads about these things and one wonders how it's all going to evolve. How are my kids and my our next generations? What are they? What kind of world are they going to inherit? And so those are things that sometimes sometimes keep you awake in the night, if not anything else. So yeah, it's terrific. Those are terrific conversations. Sridhar, that was fantastic to hear about your journey. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is, your growth in the corporate America, right? And you've done well in large corporations. You've risen to executive ranks. Um, what what is important for someone from outside America? I mean, now of course you do see a lot more success for for immigrants to come and rise in the corporate America. But what was on your side? What did you do right?
I don't know if I've done anything right. I have to be super open. As I said, I've always believed in micro pivots. I know, I understand to a certain extent what some of my goals are, but it's all about the philosophy of fight to live another day. Let's see what I can do for next week. Because if you don't get tonight right,
Yeah.
the next week right, you're not going to get the year right. The focus on vision, strategy is all great, but be execution focused. Like today, tomorrow. And I think that has served me extremely well, irrespective of being in a big company. I've been in $100 billion companies, and I've been in startups. I've been in a $2 to $3 billion private equity. Um, I think that nugget of being execution focused, as I said, if you can deliver a product or a service which makes money in 8 to 10 months, that's been my sweet spot. There are some people who thrive with products that take 5 to 10 years to create. That's not me. That's clearly not me. And I have that level of impatience. I insist on the higher standards. Of course, we all think big, but having the bias for action today, with a combination of learning to be curious and, most importantly, simplify complex things as much as possible. And I think just that framework is a universal mantra for you to rise in any organization, because no one can hide a gem. It's hard. It's hard.
Yep.
You may you may stumble, but eventually you will get out.
Yep. Yep.
You will get out, and that's the best piece of advice I can give.
Terrific. Terrific. What I'm hearing and what I'm taking away, and for folks who are listening to this, is what is core to you seems like, very keeping it real, keeping it focused on outcomes and results. And that's really served you. And I think that's a great mantra for all of us. Week by week, what kind of outcomes can you deliver? And that is what I'm hearing in what you're sharing. All right, Sridhar, we're going to the last part of our conversation, which is a bunch of fun questions, rapid fire round, work related. So, ready to go?
All right,
Go.
hit me.
So, favorite day of the week. Which is your favorite day of the week?
Oh, Monday.
Monday, Magic Monday.
Absolutely, Monday.
You officially qualify as a work yogi now, because if your Monday is your favorite day, you're a work yogi.
I love my Mondays.
Terrific. Your favorite city, other than Boston and Bangalore? I know you travel a lot, so what's your favorite city?
More than Boston and Bangalore, London.
Ah, all right, all right.
My home, my friends. I love my London.
Beautiful. A place you most want to travel, which you've not done yet?
Bhutan.
Bhutan, the happiest place on earth.
Yeah, I've been told.
They have a they don't have a GDP. They have a happiness index, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I've been to 87 countries. So Bhutan is, on the list, and I want to take my son before he goes to college, and Bhutan is
Nice,
one of the places.
terrific. In your opinion, the most inspirational person from business, could be philosopher, whatever, doesn't matter.
Boy, that's such a difficult question.
Pick
Um,
three if you want. If you
no, no, I'm gonna pick a very humble person. His name is Dr. Story Musgrave, um, and his humility. We were supposed to be on a panel together, and he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he said, "I would like to be a connection." And I go on his LinkedIn profile, and it starts with a father and a loving grandfather in a LinkedIn profile. And then I go look at it and say, he's a landscape architect. And then I'm like, okay, so why does a landscape architect want to connect with me? And then he says he's a scrappy musician. And then I go look, oh, he's played in Carnegie Hall, so he's amazing. And then, he says, astronaut. He's been to space 6 times. And I'm like, wow, he's accomplished, amazing. And then I see he was a brain surgeon or trauma surgeon. And I look at this person's life and say, in one life, Dr. Story Musgrave, my interactions with him has been so little, but I cherish that little email and how mentally I went and checked his profile, and I was like, you know what, the landscape architect, musician. And then I started to like peel through, and in one life people can do many things. So you can get inspiration from so many places. So
beautiful, beautiful. That's terrific. Awesome on that one. Um, Favorite part of the year, fall or spring?
spring.
Spring. You're right in the middle of it.
Absolutely, without an iota of doubt, spring. I grew up in a tropical zone, man. Like, winter is like, is even though I run a lot in the winter, I run because I need to be able to get through winter, I guess. But I love spring.
All right. So either fantastic conversation. I think we touched upon some very, very important areas and topics that I think our viewers will find useful and can take some of that back to their own lives. So thank you for sharing your work journey, and appreciate you taking the time out and joining me here.
Santosh, I want to say one other thing. Having seen your Run Yogi Diaries, I think I was number 4 on your Run Yogi Diaries.
Correct.
For a guy who's run like 7 marathons, and which was nothing impressive. And if I look at all the kinds of people you have interviewed after, I am positive in the WorkYogi Diaries, you're going to be talking to people like Dr. Story Musgrave. You will talk to some of the greats who run, the Fortune 1, Fortune 2 companies.
Thank you.
So
Thank
keep
you.
doing that. This is something that, it's like in the progression, I'm like somewhere deep below, and I want to see and get inspired and listen to your conversations with some of the true greats, and keep inspiring. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You're being humble, but I really take your wishes, and thanks for that. Bye then. Have a wonderful weekend, and we shall be in touch.
All right. Thank you, Santosh. Thank you for having me.